Okay, so chapter 8 is on project teams and methods. It's fascinating to see that most civic tech work is also change work. We're talking about change management predominantly, but it's about shifting. It's about socio-technical transitions, moving from one piece of software to another, or it's about building software that meets the public's needs, but it's to increase capacity of the public sector to do so. And there are many different roles that people can take on. I mean, the term IT is very much belonging to this, inside the mission of the organization. It's a program, it's a mission of work. And there has been an emphasis also most recently on soft skills. And as we said, that's a primary skill set that without civic technologists won't go very far. In the government, however, the government usually builds rather than buys software. And that's the US mentality potentially. Others may customize software that they buy off the shelf, but usually it's highly customized. So they get partner organizations to come in, suppliers and contractors to team up with them rather than do it by themselves. The groups are usually found within information technology departments. The people dealing with code are typically called application developers or IT analysts or just purely analysts. They're not really called engineers. There will be staff members called something else like business systems analysts who own some of the responsibilities. You're used to product manage. And there are user experience groups handling under different names, often those other ethereal kinds of interactions. There is this creeping up of agile practices. We'll come in, do a little bit, make sure it works, and then move on. And sometimes these individuals are called product managers or product owners, where they come in, demonstrate something, and then move on to another demonstration, move on to something else that sort of is supposedly going to build an end-to-end system. But often governments look at software as an internal technology capacity where they bring on at least one external vendor or a systems integrator or an independent software provider to come and help with the design of a system. Now, increasingly, governments are going to open source teams, and assumptions are that we are using this engineering design product triad. So if you join a group that works outside government on the volunteer or startup side of civic tech, they will be using open source, and you may encounter different roles and practices that are common to open source projects. And this is where we start to look at increasing numbers of people wanting to volunteer their time and work on civic projects, putting up their proposals on GitHub. We did a couple of studies ourselves last year and the year before, which looked at COVID apps and the development of COVID apps using open source software, and to see what that looked like so that it would allow public scrutiny. Now, engineering often outnumbers the other two buckets of design and product by a factor of 10 or more, but it depends on the key components of the process and the level of self-organizing teams that are available in the different disciplines, and particularly when we look at the management of these groups of people. Engineering includes on the back end, front end security, the DevOps team, the testing, the data science, and more. The UX team is usually a very visual group, content oriented, and even service design. And we find that these groups work together to share in an understanding of the goal, make it clear how technology can be used to achieve the goal, and at least some of the ecosystem and architecture challenges are already known, so that the volunteers are building on existing knowledge. And so leveling up partners is important. Often production monitoring is an issue in government agencies. It's almost non-existent according to SID. And sometimes quality assurance is rather informal than very much a group-oriented activity to ensure that there is quality. So there are a number of things to remember here, particularly when we're looking at open source versus build it yourself or go to an independent service provider or software vendor, I should say. But really, what we want to do is empower the creation of a product in relevant teams that are functional and work well together. Product management is one of those titles that is really underdeveloped in government. And Sid says product management is also the hardest tech skill to translate directly to a space that doesn't think of itself as making products. So product owner roles reduced to a person who runs meetings and grooms the backlog are relatively easy to find, but product management as it's practiced for perhaps in Silicon Valley is almost non-existent in the government sector. So with that, those are a few of the different types of skill sets. And I wonder where you consider yourself slotting in if you're in a government agency building civic tech, or if you're a volunteer doing this in an open source manner.